Hi there folks, I'm Arran Topalian and welcome back to another episode of Game Design Live. For any newcomers, GDL offers you live interactive design deconstructions of a video game as it's played by a game designer, where we ask questions about a game's design and chat about the potential rationale, pros and cons behind its various design decisions. So if you're into game design in general or into a certain game and want to understand it better on a design level, this is the place to be. It's also an interactive medium where you can ask questions about a game and we can chat about it together. And tonight we have the second part of our deep dive on Doom Eternal. We had the first part last week. I had originally intended to do just one episode, but unfortunately we ran out of time, so here we are doing the second mini episode. It's going to be 30 minutes long, and as always it will be available as a VOD on the channel and on the YouTube channel after that. And we started off right here in the Fortress of Doom. Intentionally so, as it's something I wanted to talk about first before we get into the nitty-gritty of level 6, which is the level we're going to be playing through tonight, as it features the much debated Marauder, which we're going to be talking about, assuming I'm skilled enough to get to it at the end of the level. But anyway, so the Fortress of Doom. Also, just to quickly touch on what we talked about last time, we talked about a bunch of stuff regarding the different possible design rationales and implications. We talked about weak points on enemies, we talked about recharging health versus static health, we talked about orthogonal unit differentiation, we talked about problem-driven weapon design, glory kills, all very intentional and, to my mind, well thought through design choices, which are the best kind. So much so that, like I say, we ran out of time. And here we find ourselves in the Fortress of Doom, which is kind of like the hub area of the game. So when the game starts, you're presented with this kind of like space. It's completely enemy-free, and it's an area for you to sort of roam around and gradually unlock different bits and pieces. And it also displays things as you unlock them in the game. So as you unlock new weapons, or you collect new collectibles, or you can even go ahead and I think they're called power cells, which you can earn to unlock new suits of armor that you can wear and customize your Doom guy. So there's a few different reasons as to why I wanted to talk about this. But it's a big addition from Doom 16, which didn't feature anything like this whatsoever. So the question is, why take the time and resources to include a location like this in the first place? As you can see, there's an awful lot of detail, and it's quite sizable, so why take the time and effort to add this kind of location to the game, especially when Doom 16 did such a great job of just arguably giving players what they wanted, which was a shooter, and something just to indulge in that kind of power fantasy. So why do it? And to answer that question, I think we need to kind of take a look at other elements Doom Eternal added to itself since Doom 16, which is namely the multiplayer and its live service elements. So Doom Eternal, to my mind at least, was designed to make a very concerted effort to become more of a lifestyle game that keeps players playing and engaged. So for those of you who are unfamiliar with the term, a lifestyle game is akin to something like Overwatch or Destiny or Dauntless. It's games that are designed to support a large community of players and keep players coming back, and typically offer different ways to experience that game, and a very high ceiling with regards to progression. In other words, lots of things to unlock or progress, or it can be extrinsic or intrinsic. So it can either be lots of things to unlock extrinsically, so gear and suits and points and whatever else, or intrinsically, so there's a very high skill ceiling, for example, in Overwatch. And these are referred to, like I say, as lifestyle games, games that you will frequently come back to night after night to play over and over for dozens and dozens of hours. And I think that where Doom Eternal is concerned, the benefit of these kind of products is, and I call them products quite intentionally, the benefit of these kind of products is that they have I guess what you'd call quite a high return on investment, right? Like X amount goes into making a game, and then in return, I would imagine businesses want some sort of like some sort of payback for that. So lifestyle games can offer a strong means to kind of offer that, and also from a player standpoint, they're fantastic because they almost offer players entirely new worlds to just sort of live inside of almost. So they can be incredibly immersive and rewarding in that sense. And I think with Doom Eternal is concerned, there's a couple of different reasons as to why maybe it shows itself as more of a lifestyle game. You can look at its multiplayer, so they made a concerted effort to include multiplayer in the game, and also they have a battle pass, which we'll show at the end of the episode rather than leaving the Fortress of Doom, which I say with a straight face, and and we'll have a look at it later. But yeah, the game also includes a free battle pass system. I'm not going to go into the details of what a battle pass are. I'm sure most of you already know what a battle pass is already. But I'd be more than happy to do a video at some point on battle passes if that's something people are interested in, want to know more about, or want to know more about the psychology behind them. So yeah, with that in mind, I think we can see a lot of value in adding a sort of a hub location to a lifestyle game, right? It's sort of a home away from home. It's a location for the player to come back to repeatedly. And another part of the reason why I think the Fortress of Doom, a hub location, is so important, especially for a lifestyle game, is we as humans tend to place an awful lot of value in what we ourselves build or put together. And it's actually, there's a psychological term for it known as the IKEA effect. I'm sure you can imagine why it's called that. So the IKEA effect stipulates that we place, like I say, an awful lot of value in things that we either partially or fully build ourselves. So when you offer players a visual representation of the progress they've made in a game, it can be extremely compelling and very difficult to leave behind because we place so much value on it. So you look at other games, for example, even mobile games like Gardenscapes. These games make, again, a very big effort to offer players a visual embodiment of the progress they've made so far in their experience in the game, because it's a reason to come back. It's a home that you've built up yourself over time. So it can be a strong retention mechanic, but also an engagement mechanic as well. So yeah, that's the Fortress of Doom. Let's crack on then with level 6. What episode are we on now? I have no idea.
This is the Resistance Network.
Oh, that's the wrong thing. Is it this? Oh, hang on. There we go. The thing that says mission select. And we're going for Art Complex. So, like I said, tonight the main focus is going to be on the Marauder, where we're going to be talking a bit about the Marauder and its design, which is somewhat divisive. We're also going to be talking a little bit about the level design and some various sort of UX bits and pieces that I'm quite a fan of in the game. I'm just going to check as well and make sure the difficulty is set to low so I don't die over and over. There we go.
Good news for the faithful. The deceiver, Samuel Hayden, has...
So yeah, the places that Doom chooses to present you with are essentially, they're fights inside of sort of mini arenas. They're enclosed spaces. Oh, this is going to be tough for me to do because I have nowhere near leveled up enough to... I mean, intrinsically leveled up to do this, but we're going to see how it goes. You might need to bear with me as I finish these fights before trying to talk. What I really love about Doom Eternal, we talked about this a little bit last time, but what I particularly love is the fact that fights are very rarely lock and key designs, and this is actually part of what we're going to be talking about with the Marauder when we get to it. But lock and key designs are essentially saying to the player, you know, put the square thing in the square hole. So they can be quite simplistic. They tend to offer very low skill ceilings, and also they take away an awful lot of autonomy from a player. And autonomy is a very big part of an experience, especially for older players as opposed to younger. But even younger players, you look at things like Minecraft, their freedom to do whatever they want to do is very strong. So yeah, when you have lock and key designs, it can tend to feel a little bit lackluster because you're being told what to do rather than being offered choices of what to do. Oh no. These things. I never liked these things. Oh. You see here though that these enemies, so we talked about this a little bit last time, these enemies are designed to throw projectiles at you that really force you. I mean, I was moving side to side there and still couldn't dodge their sort of blade style attacks they were throwing at me from a distance, which basically is telling me as a player the only way to get around this is to use the dodge ability, this thing here that I'm doing right now. So the player is sort of encouraged to do the thing, to do the right thing when they're given the right cue. And over time, as you learn this, it feels that you're getting smarter, it feels that you're getting better, and it taps into what we talked about, which was, you know, that game design is very much like doing an easy-to-figure-out magic trick, an intentionally easy-to-figure-out magic trick. You want your audience to figure it out because it feels good when you figure it out, and you feel good for them because they figured it out. So you're wanting them to figure out the solutions to the problems that you're presenting them with, without actually telling them what the solution is. Whoa! This is a very different pace to what I've been playing an awful lot of lately, and I'm very likely to do an episode of GDL in the near future, which is Destiny 2. This experience is far more intense. Oh, okay. One more. We are going to come right back to level design in just a second, as soon as I kill this demon. Oh, and this one. I know that weak points were very divisive, like when Doom Eternal released, some people were very big fans of them, others not so much. Personally, I thought they were a really interesting addition. They're not something you absolutely have to do, they're very optional, but they can make the fight considerably easier. They change the fight up as a result, and also they offer, again, like we discussed before, a higher skill ceiling, right? So if you're good at aim, then power to you. If you want to get good at aim, then power to you. We'll give you a reward for that. If not, if you want to focus on moving and shooting, that's also fine. It's going to be a little bit harder as a result, but it can still be done. There's no singular solution, which is very different. But there is an optimal solution. We can also see, let's just talk about some UX stuff while we're at this for a second. We'll come back to levels as soon as we're done. The UX of Doom Eternal is particularly fantastic. Like, you look at games like Hades, who also offer excellent UX experiences. Doom is also, in my opinion, incredibly impressive. They go to a lot of effort to give you the important information in very clear and easy to see ways. So even this here is a good example, is the low ammo display in the bottom middle of the screen, which is right now the loudest thing, arguably, on the entire screen. It's because it's flashing, it's red. It's very close to our reticle, which is probably where we're going to be spending most of the time looking if we're not looking at the edges of the screen. So the most important information is the loudest and the most visible. I think also health does start to get a little bit louder as it gets further down, but it is quite interesting to note that we're down at 23 health. Like, normally you would expect that to be kind of flashing red or something, or have a few more bells and whistles to indicate, hey, you're very close to death, which is quite an important thing to tell a player, right? And so far, it doesn't seem to be doing very much, which we noticed the opposite of on our episodes on Returnal, which do a really great job of telling the player when they're very close to death. Like, they have all the fireworks going off when that's happening. I should be going this way, shouldn't I? Yeah. I did look up what level had the Marauder in it, and it did say level 6, and I'm hoping this is the level 6 they meant. Either way, we're going to talk about it. You get a real clear sense of which weapons are the right sort of tools for the job as well as you play. Like, for example, these things, which are incredibly quick and agile. I forget what they're called. But because the rocket launcher has this sort of lock-on function, it feels like the right tool for the job. And when I pick it and use it and I can see the results, I feel smart as a player for it. So it's very satisfying. Oh, I remember this from the original Doom. The original Doom, like the original Doom. There was a Doom before Doom 2016, okay, for you kids out there. Long before, and it was great. Oh, I don't know. Whoa! So yeah, Doom chooses to present you with fights that are essentially sort of mini arenas. They're very enclosed, small, typically quite coverless spaces, and this type of level design, if you look at it closely, further facilitates the type of combat experience that Doom wants to give its players. We talked about this at length in the last episode on Push Forward Combat. If you've not seen it, definitely check it out, where I go into a lot more detail about what that means and is. So yeah, no cover means no opportunities for stopping. Smaller spaces mean less opportunity for defensive play, and these sort of, as opposed to open spaces, which help players avoid combat. But at the same time, what's interesting is that, you know, when you look at these kind of environments, there are obstacles, there are bits and pieces, but a lot of the time they're quite singular, and most of the decoration is kept around the edges of the environment. We can see this in a bit more detail as you push forward, which from a design perspective makes a lot of sense, especially for a game where you're moving very quickly and encouraged to move very quickly, because the worst thing in a game like this is catching on terrain. It's almost as like feel bad as playing Spider-Man and slamming into a building. Like there's no ramification for it. You just feel crap. Like it's not how Spider-Man should move. So it feels kind of bad when you do it accidentally. And same goes for a game like this, right? Like you want to feel skilled as this powerful avenging force, and the last thing you expect that kind of character to be doing is running into a wall sideways. So yeah, I think level design plays a big part in that. Whoa! What's also interesting is the way that Doom's arenas almost always offer players like several tracks to run through. Like this is probably a little bit less of a good example because this is quite a linear corridor that we're fighting through. But typically Doom offers these sort of like squarish almost spaces to fight in. Hang on, let's just take care of this guy first. I hated these things as well. You're almost going from 1v1 combat to 1v1 combat, but on a very fast basis. Like if you watch the way I'm playing, I'm sort of going in for an enemy, focusing on it, moving on to the next one. Like it's almost like a samurai circle, but a first-person shooter. This is green. Am I supposed to do something with this? Nope. Ah. This is green because it's telling me to go this way, not because I have to do anything with it. And as always, you know, with things that you can... this is quite a common thing you see in games, but just to call it out anyway, a lot of the time things you can interact with physically are given a certain color coding. Games do this quite often, some games to huge extremes, like Mirror's Edge, for example, which needed to do it for the experience that they had, and it might be worth an episode in GDL, to be honest. But yeah, so in Doom, anything you can mantle or grapple onto is colored yellow, which again is just a sort of a subtle lesson the game teaches players over time. To make it a little bit more intuitive and also know where to go. Again, without being explicitly told where to go. But yeah, a lot of Doom's environments tend to offer players sort of several tracks to run around in. Let's just finish this. So if you can imagine almost like a sprint track, you know, like a sprint track where you've got like different lanes going in from the most inside lane to the most outside lane. And a lot of the time I've tended to find that Doom levels emulate that kind of setup. Let's just do this again. Oh, I forgot I had a grenade launcher. That's good to remember. No. No, 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 no. Oh. They get gore right. I'm gonna give it. I'm gonna say it. They get gore so right. Can I just go this way? Do I have to do the fighting, or can I just push on to the thing? Possibly not. This I do find kind of frustrating. Like I understand the rationale for it, which is this purple goo. You find it every so often in the levels, and basically if you step inside it, you move slower. And I do understand the rationale for it. It's something to avoid. But going slow, fundamentally, especially in a game where you're constantly moving fast, can feel extremely frustrating, and as a punishment is quite annoying. But at the same time, you know, it's definitely an effective incentive to watch where you're going. Oh no, not this thing. I remember this thing too. This was awful. It's all bad. Great. Cool. So as we were saying, different tracks to move around. And this is likely to make navigating arenas slightly more intuitive and allowing players to sort of stay on the move without having to focus too much on where they're actually going. I mean, even as you could see there, for example, I was doing a lot of focus on just shooting the enemies. And even in this bit of level design, you can see some quite interesting design choices, and I don't know if it's intentional or not, but you can see these sort of like zebra crossings that are painted around the area, which almost are kind of like an outline of the perimeter, at least actually up to here, and then it just gets covered in slime, and you've got this kind of this booster pad here. But it almost runs in, like I say, like a track, like a circle, a square circle, where you're going right the way around in a loop, and then stopping off here. But you can see that it's kind of like there are ways to keep moving forward, if that makes sense. And I think, like I say, it's to help players more easily navigate an environment without paying too much attention to where they're going. So again, they feel as cool as they're supposed to feel, assuming they take the time to master what they have to master. Okay, now where do we go? The thing is telling us, isn't it? Oh wow, I'm way off in the wrong direction. Ah, cool, okay.
The entrance into Dr. Hayden's outpost is blocked. 2 peripheral turrets identified. Calculating optimal firing path. Confirm. You could use both turrets to clear a path. I will mark them for you.
And more. Nope, 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 nope. God. But you can also see that the size of the arenas, like I say, they're quite narrow, quite small, and I think that adds as well to the feeling of going faster. Like if you can imagine, like, you know, a very quick moving avatar like this one, moving across a big open space, you're probably going to feel a lot slower than you actually are. It's a bit like that sort of illusion where you're in a car for X amount of time while driving down a motorway, and at the start of that drive, you know, you feel like you're going quite fast, but then after, like, you know, like 25 minutes or whatever, you feel like you're just going at regular speeds, which you're not by any means. You're going really quite fast anyway, but it doesn't feel that way. And I think, oh wow, it's getting really busy. Oh, I was looking at armor before, not health. That's why I wasn't doing anything flashy. That would make more sense. Let's just take out something a bit more powerful. This is absolutely the wrong weapon for the job, but it's okay. Oh yeah, I forgot about this thing. I do wish the enemies had a little bit more grace when they were in glory kill state and you shot them just a little bit too much to the point they actually just die. Like, especially in such a frantic action game where you're just shooting, it can be a little bit frustrating to lay in like one too few many bullets and then lose the glory kill as a result. You'll notice as well, I mean, games go to a lot of effort to do this, is not just in shooters, but in most kinds of game, really. A lot of the time, my aim is not actually all that great, which you probably know by now, seeing me play a variety of games. But a lot of the time, especially when I'm doing something like this move, for example, and I'm shooting a sticky grenade onto an enemy's weak point, the grenade is actually, in terms of trajectory, like way off. But the game gives me a little helping hand, a very quick, quiet helping hand, where, you know, the grenade just magically sort of zaps to the side and it sticks to where I was obviously intending it to go. And games like, like I say, platforming games do this an awful lot as well. They do what's called the coyote jump, where the player is given a sort of couple of milliseconds of grace period before they actually fall after coming off the edge of a ledge, so they can jump after that fact. So it results in less falls to their death, and they feel better as a result. So Doom is no exception by any means. Most games have ways and means, quiet ways and means of making the player feel better about themselves in terms of skill level. Because that's the idea. That's what we all like. That's what I like. But yeah, so we were saying, I think a big part of why the levels are designed the way they are to be quite claustrophobic is A, to make the encounters more intense, but like we say as well, it makes you feel like you're moving faster than you actually are. You're still moving fast, but I think it makes you feel it makes you feel like you're moving faster than you actually are because of the size of the space, plus the speed you're moving at. Oh boy, where'd I go? Oh, come on. Oh, well that's not too bad. The Khan Makir will periodically empower a demon that has killed another player in the campaign. This is new, I've not seen this before. Empowered demons are stronger and they drop extra resources when killed. That's very cool, so you're sort of adding a little bit of variety to the gameplay. Assassin's Creed Valhalla does something similar, where you come across sort of different soldiers in the environment and it tells you what player they killed, and I think you're given some sort of notification if an enemy that killed you is killed by another player. You're sort of avenged. And it helps build the community as well, right? Like, it makes you feel like there are other players out there. Much the same as in Dark Souls, where you see signs left behind by other players. It's not explicitly a multiplayer game, but it is still a multiplayer game in various ways and means, and that just helps create more of a sense of other players in the environment with you. Oh, this is the wrong weapon. A big reason, I think, as well, why... so Doom Eternal had a fair amount of commentary on its story, especially from its sort of more dedicated fan base. And I can definitely understand why. I have by no means a problem with the story. I tend not to play games for story anyway. I'm more into sort of the ludology of a game, which is a fancy word for gameplay mechanics, basically. Which I said purely just to let you know what the word was, not to show off. So, can I break through this? Oh, I can, cool. Is this the first time I found this? It very likely is, but I'm going to leave it behind, because we haven't got time, because I need to show you the Marauder. But yeah, in Doom Eternal, I think they focus much more on giving it a story, on, whoa. Am I just... oh. Okay. Oh, I remember how these work. These recharge your jump. Okay, cool. Yeah, these are quite interesting if you haven't seen these before. So these little yellow capsules, they recharge your dash. So they're quite handy for either giving slightly more intense combat experiences because you can dash more often, or to create these sort of mini platforming experiences. They're quite a smart addition. Just to offer players slightly more interesting traversal in an easy way. Just by literally adding a consumable. So from a development standpoint, they're relatively cheap. Oh, I'm really low on ammo. Let's just do this. There we go. And it's fun. You'll notice as well, like, actually let's finish the point we're on, which is the story. I think where Doom 16 really excelled was, I think when it comes to game design, you're often having to sort of really ask yourself who the target audience is of your game, like who's going to be playing this game. And the better an idea of that you have, it's by no means a guarantee you're going to get it right. In fact, I'm sure 9 times out of 10 it's going to be wrong. But at least having a sense of who is going to be playing your game can help you design the game maybe with a slightly clearer sense of vision than you otherwise would. You know, if you know that your audience really likes, if you want to make, you know, whatever, zoo sim, and you know that your audience really likes pandas, or the audience you're targeting really likes pandas, then you can go heavy on pandas, and then you give them the game they really want to play. So it's better for you, and it's also better for them. And I think where Doom was concerned, that they had a real clear sense of who was going to be playing their game, which were Doom fans and shooter fans. Probably not, you know, folk who are playing things like Gardenscapes, for example. Not that there's anything wrong with Gardenscapes. I play it myself. It's a great game. For that matter, I play both. But it's just an example. But yeah, I think they had a really clear sense of who was going to be playing their game, and as a result could design their game. Oh, God, just pretend you didn't see that. Could design their game. Really? Twice? Am I doing something wrong? Ah, there we go. Wow, that was really tetchy, wasn't it? So yeah, they went very light on the story in Doom 16. They knew that people came for a shooter, and that's what they were happy to give them was, oh no, was a shooter. But it's also understandable, I think, as to why they doubled down a little bit more in the story, especially since, like we say, I think they wanted to turn it into a bit more of a lifestyle product and potentially open the way for more of a franchise, and allow the game to create a foundation for a bit more of a re-established IP. Now, I'm not... I totally agree, by the way, Black Ice. I know exactly what you mean. I'm really struggling to talk and figure out where I'm supposed to go. It's not exactly the easiest. I'm not going to lie, especially here. Like, yeah, that definitely wasn't right. I'm really hoping this is the level 6 that I was led to believe it was for... Ah, okay, so they're giving a little green light here again. A subtle green light to tell me where to go. I don't know why that was needed. Like, why make me move the box? Why not just give me the box? This is kind of what we were talking about before, right? Like, Doom 16 kind of knew why people were coming into the game. And it wasn't to be a puzzle platformer or to experience a puzzle platformer. It was to shoot demons and have a great time doing so. I can see green light there. I don't know if that's the right way to go, though. Is it there? Do I jump all the way over there? It can't be that. That doesn't look right at all. It must be this, right? Okay, hang on. Ooh. Go me. Can I just say, guys? Figured that out all by myself. Okay. Alright, get the idea. Let me just talk about some more design stuff. Done. So yeah. You've also seen, as we've been playing, every so often when I chainsaw an enemy, which is not something you get to see very often, they sort of spill all these goodies onto the floor, which are ammo. And it's an interesting question to ask. Well, even there, you know, why design these pickups to look like that? Like, why even have those in the first place? Like, why make them look like that, and why have them in the first place? Why not just add ammo straight into the wallet? Like, why even have it pouring out like this at all, or why make it look like that? So to answer the first part of that question, which is, you know, why make it look like that? It's the only thing I think in Doom's combat experience that is very very neon, let's say. So it stands out very well, right? So it's purely a visual UX factor to make sure that players don't miss this stuff that's spilling onto the floor. But what is interesting is the fact that when that stuff, let's do it again actually. So there's all the stuff on the floor. So it's very hard to miss, but you'll see there just what happened. It vanishes after a split second. So normally what you would expect is, you know, if something is designed to look very easy to spot, it's because, you know, you want players to be reminded that it's there, not to forget that it's there, and to be able to find it easily in the heat of battle, which is happening right now, dude. Hang on, let's just... He was not up for it. Yeah, so it's interesting that these collectibles, these ammo resources, just vanish after X amount of time. And the fact that they're designed in a way that looks like they'd be designed to be easy to notice. They are. I mean, I totally agree with you, Black Ice. We talked about this in the first episode, right? Which is that Doom is absolutely a resource management game, and I think actually in Doom Eternal they take it to extremes. I think that's part of maybe they took it a little bit too much so, where it became a lot more about sort of minding your resources and being cognizant of topping up your resources rather than just focusing on the shooting. But they are absolutely that. I think it's a big part of the reason. It also helped. We talked about this, but I'm going to talk about it again because it was kind of interesting. Like the rarity of ammo in Doom actually helps players understand a bit more about how special and important a weapon is. So for example, the BFG, which has very rare ammo drops, because it has rare ammo drops, it further emphasizes the importance of the weapon and facilities of the weapon. Like it's clearly a sort of emergency use only weapon because the ammo is so scarce. And it also encourages you to be a bit more mindful when you use it. Like if they gave that out like candy, then obviously you'd be spamming that BFG all the time, which to be fair does sound pretty good fun. But yeah, so it's absolutely that. But so circling back around to the resources that... Oh, I'm going to miss it. I'm going to miss it. Oh. The resources that drop when an enemy is chainsawed. Yeah, it's interesting that they sort of just vanish straight after... or not straight after, but pretty soon after they're dropped. Oh, well, come on. So the question is, well, why? Why even do them in the first place, and why make them look like that? And I think part of the reason is purely just to make the player feel like they're picking something up. Picking stuff up in a video game tends to be quite a satisfying experience, especially if it's something that just happens automatically. Like you see little sort of like things on the floor, they suck up into you automatically. And the exact psychology behind why that is, I mean, I'd personally love to know. I can hazard a guess, but it's definitely something I'd like to find out more about. And if anyone else out there knows why picking stuff up is so enjoyable or like just inherently satisfying in a game, I'd love to know. Please do get in touch. But I would say that maybe it's to do with what are called mental models. So we've talked about mental models before, sort of like pre-existing concepts that we have in our heads about something. So if you say the word chocolate, then someone has a mental model in their head of chocolate, like their experiences of chocolate, what it tastes like, how it feels to eat chocolate, the feel-good vibes, or if you hate chocolate, then bad vibes. And I think a big part of that ties into things like jumping in games as well. Like jumping in a game is always something that's sort of like a fidgety thing to do. You do it without even thinking. And is, I think, a big part of the reason why games like Mario are quite so successful, because they tap into such an early mental model, which is the ability to jump. Right, like, and again, this is me purely theory crafting here. I have no idea if this is anywhere on the money whatsoever. I'm just going on like I say, on pure theory. But you know, when we learn to jump as a child, it's a very big and exciting moment for us, as it is to walk and to run, which are all things that you do in Mario, and pretty much the only things you do in Mario, besides, you know, mastering those core mechanics. So I think when it comes to picking things up in games, the reason it's so satisfying, inherently satisfying, is because it's again a very early mastery that we achieve, and it's something we can easily relate to, and we have an awful lot of relatively positive preconceptions of. It's gathering stuff, right? It's the very basic concept of gathering, which goes even further back in terms of mental models, right? We're back in caveman times at that point. Oh, let's just do this. This is fun. There we go. Oh wow, we are actually way into this episode. I had no idea. This was meant to be a 30-minute episode. It's now 40 minutes, and I've still not come across this Marauder, so I might just go ahead and talk about it, and if we come... I bet what's going to happen is by the time I finish talking about him, we actually encounter him. But I'm going to go ahead and just start talking about him as soon as I've killed this really annoying enemy. Whoa. Yeah, so the first encounter with the Marauder was apparently the end of Mission 6, which I'm obviously still not at yet, or I've got the wrong mission, either way. And of all Eternals editions, there's none more divisive, I would say, than the Marauder. Vice actually called the Marauder Doom Eternal's biggest indulgence and greatest failing, which is quite a statement. So, yeah, this enemy is essentially designed to be the sort of anti-Doom guy of the game. Let me just finish you off as well. There we go. He has a shield that you can't break. He has Oh, is that it? Yeah, cool. He summons ads, I think. He summons sort of like smaller minions that continue to sort of pester you. He reacts very fast to your actions and attacks. He has a hit scan weapon with a very subtle attack telegraph, so in many ways he sort of breaks the rules of Doom, the rules that the game itself establishes for a player. So we're going to talk a bit about why this enemy is so divisive, and maybe why the developers chose to design him or her, or whatever the Marauder is, design it in the most, like, in the way that they designed the Marauder. So we talked a bit before about lock and key design, like we touched on it very lightly. Whenever you're fighting other enemies in the game, there are clearly optimal solutions and strategies waiting to be, oh dude, seriously, right in the face. There are clearly optimal solutions and strategies waiting to be discovered by the player, which, you know, are created by things like the utilities of the weapon and the advantages and disadvantages that they offer, and the behaviorisms and the stats of the different enemies. So there are optimal solutions to discover because of all these things. But the key phrase there is that they're optimal solutions, right? While there are various opportune moments, you might call, for players to learn and keep an eye out for, there's rarely a prescriptive... Oh, nope. Can I just chainsaw this thing? Nope, I cannot. Oh, no. That didn't go well. There are an awful lot of things I really want to talk about beyond the Marauder as well. Like, there's lives, there's mission-specific objectives as well. There's a whole bunch of other things that Doom does which are quite interesting. So if anyone ever wants another episode on Doom Eternal, specifically a deep dive, then do please feel to get in touch. Either via Twitch or via Twitter or YouTube. You can access all the links to all the sites on this Twitch channel. And as always, if you're enjoying the content, please do give the channel a follow. It would be very much appreciated. We are so close to 50 followers. We're now at 48. 2 more, and we're going to be at 50, which is the first milestone. And I'm going to be doing a bonus episode on Overwatch for you guys as a result. So do please give it a follow if you're enjoying the content. But yeah, so we're finished with that now. So the key optimal... the key phrase there, like I say, is optimal solutions. So the game doesn't sort of set things up in a way where if a player sees a square hole, they know to just put a square object through it, which, like I said before, is sort of referred to as lock and key design. And the negative of this is that, you know, autonomy is lost. That's not to say that lock and key design is bad. It's very rarely the case that any kind of design is inherently bad. It's just a case of what the right kind of design is for a different kind of audience. So again, it kind of comes back around to what we talked about before about making sure that you're designing for the right kind of player, or the player that you want to be, the player you want to be playing the game. And yeah, so like another way to put that is, in my experience, design is only bad design when design and audience fail to align, which is kind of the responsibility of the designer in the first place. But anyway, that's a side note. So this is where the Marauder really kind of... Sorry, just slapped my microphone at the same time. This is where the Marauder really stands out, because it requires a very prescriptive approach to defeat it, rather than offering what's referred to as expressive play. So this entire time you've been watching me play, this is what you would call expressive play, where I have full autonomy over what I'm doing, and I'm allowed to solve problems in whatever way, shape or form I see fit. I'm allowed to create my own solutions on the fly. There are optimal solutions, but they're by no means prescriptive. So the way the Marauder works is it almost offers players what you'd call reactive combat as opposed to proactive combat. So as we touched on, the Marauder does break a number of rules that Doom sets up for itself, and I think is part of the reason why the Marauder received quite the reception that it did. For example, its energy shields, which usually can be overcharged with the plasma gun, which causes them to kind of explode and deal damage to everything else around them. The Marauder's shield, at least from what I remember, it might have changed by now, doesn't do that. It doesn't react in the same way as other enemy shields, which doesn't feel very fair for the player, right? Because they've been taught by the game, hey, this thing works in a certain way, and then all of a sudden the rules are turned on its head with no explanation, which can feel a little bit, can lead a player to feeling a little bit cheated. And the last thing you want to do when designing a game is create ways for the player to blame the game rather than blame themselves, which sounds harsh, but it's definitely better for everyone involved. Like the players should, if they come out of an encounter and didn't succeed in that encounter, ideally what you're wanting them to be saying to themselves is, I could have done better. That's because I didn't equip this weapon. That's because I didn't move at this time. That's because I didn't make this decision. Because it's a lesson learned, and that's all part of the mastery, and that's part of the joy. Is it's a lesson to be learned, and then they go back and do it again, and they get it better the next time around. Can I do this? No, I still can't do this. Okay. Like touching on your comment, Black Ice, before about resource management, this has been a bad exercise for me in resource management. I have not managed my resources at all during this episode, which is why I'm really struggling there for ammo. So yeah, I think that's a big part of the reason why the Marauder, definitely a part of the reason why the Marauder got the reaction that it did, is because, like I say, it breaks the established rules the game provides, and also has that sort of lock and key design, which also is very much kind of against Doom's, or feels like it's against Doom's core pillars. But I would like to play devil's advocate and offer the sort of flip side to that, or the potential flip side to that, to maybe kind of take a stab at why they designed it the way they designed it. So a PC Gamer article sort of expressed that the Marauder requires players to be uncharacteristically restrained and reactive, as opposed to aggressive and efficient. And we talked before about prioritization in Doom, right? Like both its importance and its intentional prevalence, wherein players need to be deciding how best to solve combat puzzles in front of them on the fly, which mainly consist of 3 steps that offer the game its core loop, which we talked about in the previous episode. And to my mind, the Marauder is essentially the trump card of the game. As soon as it shows up, players know automatically that they're required to really kind of execute the core loop, but even faster in their head, where they need to clear the battlefield very quickly of everything else so they can fight this one thing at the end a lot more safely. So it adds a sort of new element to the strategy of the game, or at least it creates, I think, a clear lesson, but a lesson that maybe doesn't want to be learned. Possibly because it's not enjoyed. There we go. Yeah, and moreover, I think as well the Marauder sort of offers players a new degree of challenge exactly because it turns the tables. It requires players to play very differently in perhaps a more prescriptive and cautious way, but in return offers a much greater sense of achievement when you do kill it. Like you can see a lot of the time with the enemy designs, while they are very orthogonal, you can very clearly tell the more powerful demons from the less powerful. They tend to get bigger, they tend to get faster, they tend to do more damage, whereas the Marauder presents a level of challenge by flipping the combat. You're no longer sort of you're no longer in the driver's seat. You're a little bit more sort of required to bend to what it's doing, rather than expecting everything else to bend to what you're doing, which I think is part of the reason why it presents the kind of challenge that it does. And like I say, when you do kill it, it does feel a lot more gratifying because of the level of challenge that it offers and the amount of skill that it involves. Which is not to say it's that huge a level of skill. Like any PvE game on a long enough timeline, because you're fighting an AI, eventually it does get quite easy. Oh, that's quite good actually. It offers players, I would say, what's referred to quite often in game design as a concept known as friction. So too much this also applies to other areas in our lives as well, but too much friction in any area of our lives tends to result in a sense of powerlessness and eventual disengagement, whereas too little friction tends to result in boredom. We can even begin to sort of question our own worth. If nothing is really kind of demanded of us, we can often feel as if it doesn't matter whether we show up or not. But just the right level of friction can make us feel like we've achieved something, and in turn gives it a lot more meaning. So yeah, in a game where enemies typically kind of get more challenging, whoops, running into a sofa, that's not good. In a game where enemies kind of typically get more challenging through damage and health and speed, the Marauder really stands out, I think, because of its design intended role as the anti-Doom guy. And I think, the name kind of says it all really. It's the flip, which I think it showcases in its mechanics and the way that it fights and the solutions that it requires of the player. It's sort of in many ways the enemy that you love to hate. There's got to be one, and you might as well just if you're gonna have a lightning rod, you might as well make it a really obvious lightning rod for people to get behind. Okay, I'm not talking anymore now, so now you're gonna get it. Oh, really? I am so low on ammo. Can I just chainsaw you? Yep. I remember earlier in my career, this is completely off subject, earlier in my career I had a mentor who told me that the more times you can ensure that if and when the player asks, can I do this thing, and the game says yes, you've done a good job. I think we mopped them all up. Okay, well I think that's going to conclude this episode of GDL. Thank you for sticking around for the extra 22 minutes of what was meant to be a mini 1.5 episode. But yeah, thank you very much for coming along and watching. As always, if you enjoyed the content, please do give the channel a follow. Oh no, another empowered demon. Please do, I'm just going to run away now. So Doom Guy, right? Please do give the channel a follow. As always, it will be available as a VOD on the channel itself. And if you're interested in any kind of like gaming related news articles or design related articles, please do also check out my Twitter, which is at @Topalian. You can check out the link from the Twitch channel as well. Thanks very much again for coming along. This has been Arran Topalian and Game Design Live, and I look forward to seeing you next Monday for our next episode of GDL. Well, I'll be updating the schedule tonight with what we're going to be looking at then. Thank you again, and good night.